Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Anchor Watch. I'm your humble host, Bobby Jones, and we are very, very lucky to have someone that hopefully can give y'all an actual realistic interpretation of all of these things that we're seeing here in the last few weeks. I have with us Kevin Barron. He is basically the founder, creator of Defense One, a media organization that specializes in national defense, international security. But most importantly, Kevin has a lot of experience covering the Pentagon and the machinations thereof. So I just want to first thank you, Kevin, for coming on today.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Kevin, you've been around military, Department of Defense, now the Department of War, the Pentagon. Can you just give our listeners and viewers an overview of how these recent decisions dealing with Iran has impacted the actual military force, starting with the Secretary of Defense and the major planners around? What are you hearing? What are your vibes regarding the decision-making of those people?
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's clear that it looks like everyone is scrambling. I don't know what this initially was supposed to be, but I guarantee it wasn't supposed to be this kind of a war, this long, and with this much resistance. Now entering what are we 5, 6, or wherever we are, what seemed at first to be billed to us by the president as short strikes to take out key targets, take out the Ayatollah, and watch the Iranian people rise up and take it from there is not what's happening, right? So every turn of the screw, every new development is a new mission set. It's a new target list. It's a new call to orders that well goes back a long chain back to the U.S. to and all the way down from the top to the bottom, out to families. It's incredibly disruptive. It's war. It's not a short combat mission anymore. All the way to the latest week in developments of we're getting into a blockade. I mean, these are words
we're going to get into that.
We read about in history books more than in reality.
Yes.
And here it is. So I think when you see things like today's news, the USS George Bush is now steaming all the way around the southern tip of Africa instead of going through Yemen. That's an impact. That's a major impact.
Yes.
When you have so many naval assets being called out of the region first to go to Venezuela and now being called back to the region. And now we have a major mine sweeping and mine clearing mission suddenly. We know the military plans for everything, but shit, There's a lot going on that they're having a plan for.
I agree, and I'm glad you brought up the George H.W. Bush. So one of the things I've been telling our viewers is do not listen to the rhetoric. Look at the movement of forces, the movement of people, the movement of resources. Yeah. What we have seen is a concentration to the CENTCOM, or United States Central Command Area of Responsibility. We have pulled air defense weaponry from Indo-PACOM, which was supposed to be the primary threat for these things. They're now being moved to the Middle East. You talk about the aircraft carriers, you're talking about, a total of 3-4 carriers being moved, rotations being rearranged. Here's the question I have. All this movement, all the ordnance, the thousands of targets that Hegseth likes to brag about, what is the strategic goal of this from the military standpoint, from the Pentagon? What are we doing this for?
Well, the strategic goal, the goals they keep listing are, denuclearization, destroy the missile capabilities, and destroy the Navy, I guess, was something that kind of came out after the fact. I think if you walk this back the last few years in history, the real goal of the conservative movement was to do more than the Biden or the Obama era Iran deal did. The Iran deal was supposed to put the handcuffs on the nuclear progress in Iran, but it did not address the missile threat from Iran or Iran funding and supplying missiles to others in the region like the Houthis. And a lot of people thought that was okay. That's a legitimate criticism of the deal, but whatever. They got to deal with the nuclear at least. If you had eyes on that, you could deal with that later. So whether you agree with criticism or not, that was the thing that was left out. And however it was sold to President Trump, and I believe Rubio when he said that Netanyahu called up Trump and sold him that this is the day to fire and launch an attack. Everything else after that is something that other planners have planned or thought about for a long time, but it wasn't like the White House really had the war plan mapped out the way that it's gone. So I think that strategically in Iran that number one, gives up their nuclear ambitions. Period. Let's,
Yes.
In a perfect world, as if it looked like a Soviet-U.S. treaty. They let in inspectors. They give up their missiles. They give up their warheads. They give up all interest and desire in obtaining a nuclear weapon. They probably do it in exchange for nuclear energy, which is real popular these days again. And they give up ballistic missile development and supplying and funding terrorists around the region. Now, Iran is a theological state. It is an extremist state. It's extreme Shiite against Sunnis in the region, and the history of the region as well. They're not giving that up. That's why the aircraft carrier is steaming around Africa, because of the threat of from the Houthis in Yemen. So, if the ultimate goal was that perfect vision of Iran gives everything up and joins everything, joins in the world community, good luck.
Well, I think their point of view, and I challenge our listeners, if this was you and you have negotiated a deal with the United States, president comes in, rips it up. While you're negotiating a new deal, you get bombed with stealth bombers. Then you're told to go back and negotiate again. And as you're trying to negotiate again, all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose because, like you said, Netanyahu sold them on the idea of doing this. And let's not forget, the president was very high off of the Venezuela success mission. He thought basically can be duplicated. Here's the thing that's blowing my mind about all of this. And I'm trying my damnedest not to be a deck plate sailor, because that's my background in that region. But if any other nation that had nuclear ambitions had gone through this, would they not double down and triple down? I mean, they saw what happened to Gaddafi when he tried to do this and get nuclear weapons. They've seen the fact that every nuclear capable country in the world has never had this type of turmoil because of the nuclear weapon deterrent. How does the United States, even the military or whatever, back off enough so they can be trusted to even negotiate? This is why I'm freaking out about it. I'm like, I don't know anybody who's logic based would sit there and say, okay, yeah, we'll trust you now, even though once, not twice in the last year, they've been bombed trying to negotiate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you used to hear a lot of generals say negotiations are how you end wars. But someone's got to do the negotiating before they get to that agreement that stops, firing, right? It's like the old days of, how many Civil War soldiers died after the war was ended, or the Revolutionary War, or, all the way up to more modern times. So I don't know. I think, clearly Trump thinks the biggest tool he has is just to pound them to hell, as he keeps saying. The threat of absolute annihilation to their leaders and families. And it didn't work with the first round. It didn't work with the second round of leaders. And now you're at third round. But I think as many people have pointed out, that, this isn't Afghanistan, and it isn't even Iraq. Iran is a large nation. You've seen those overlay maps. I think the New York Times has a really good overlay maps of the United States. It's like, from halfway the United States to the East Coast. This is a huge nation with tens of millions of people and quite large capabilities, that are not like the things that the United States or you and your service faced in those last 20-year wars. It's different, and there's a reason why no one else has tried to do this like Trump has done this. So I don't know. I think that the hope is that the Iranian leadership will. They're going to have to take some kind of medicine and get to some point, but I don't know. I don't predict the negotiations. Other than what worries me the most is that I think we have both actors in the Trump administration and his negotiators and the Iranian regime are not credible public voices. Exactly. Right? They have not told the truth repeatedly on all sorts of issues, especially with this, especially since the war's gone on, and people are out there posting. Here's all the different things, all the different ways that the White House or the Pentagon has described the war or described the effects of the fires that they've put down, and it's not true, or it's exaggerated, or what their goals are, they're exaggerating, or these timelines Trump keeps pushing on that he keeps wiping away. I mean, do you remember how Trump and those guys went ballistic over red lines with Obama and Syria and ISIS? And it was how dare you, if they found chemical, you should go nuts and bomb them. Trump has blown through 100 red lines in 6 weeks. I mean, so yeah. I don't know. I mean, So ultimately, I don't know. The way to answer your question, I believe, generals will say historically all wars end with some kind of negotiation, and there will be some kind of, whether the negotiation has anything to do with deciding to stop firing. I don't know if that even matters.
You hit on something just then that I want to circle back to. The information being put out, this Pentagon's relationship with the press. Now, you have extensive experience with this. How would you characterize the relationship between the Secretary of Defense and the Pentagon press corps?
Oh, they're fully separated on the way to the divorce court. It's a very bad relationship. So yeah, I covered the Pentagon for about 15 years. Probably about 13 or so. I was a resident member of the press corps. I mean, my daily desk was in the bullpen with the reporters who lived there from about 2008 up through around 2023. Those last years, I was more of an editor of a team of reporters at Defense One. But I covered the Pentagon for Foreign Policy magazine, National Journal. I worked for Stars and Stripes in the Army for almost 3 years as one of the 2 Pentagon reporters as well. And so, and while I was there, us reporters created the Pentagon Press Association, which was basically a club. I mean, it's not an official, it doesn't have any enforcement authority over anything. But it was a way to organize our thoughts and complaints with the Pentagon about, things like logistics of travel and who gets invited on trips and who gets, interviews with the secretary and, who's paying for the Wi-Fi in the building and how do we get our phone lines connected. I mean, there's a lot of just like the business of working with the press corps. And the White House has a press association. They famously run the correspondence, association. They have the hand in assigning the seats in the new. We didn't assign seats in the briefing room or anything like that. But it was a way to talk to all of the reporters and go, hey guys, what are we complaining about this month? Let's all put it in one email. And we had 4 officers, and I was the founding vice president for 4 years, right? 2 years, I can't remember. It was a while back. And then we meet regularly at the time, probably around once a month with the press secretary to go over those things. And vice versa. The Pentagon's way to tell the press, hey, this is what's coming down the pipe. These are the changes. This is why, only 3 of you are going to China on the trip and not 12. And, you guys, we have room for 1. You decide who you want to bring, that kind of stuff. It was really a good faith negotiating. And so they've really taken center stage now because, as we've all been chronicling for a long time, Hegseth has come in and just, just lock down all these rules to basically kick the reporters, with the effect of kicking reporters out of the Pentagon, and in his mind for good. And so it's quite extraordinary. And there's a million I can talk about. You ask me what you want about it, but the moment that happened this week is we've got the second, a New York judge ruled in favor of the New York Times who sued, saying, you can't take our badges away. You got it, or you can't change the rules. You need the way you change them. You need to reopen access to Pentagon, unfettered access. The Pentagon responded to the first ruling saying, "Okay, sure, here's our new rules." When it was a total BS rewriting of the same rules they tried before, not actually answering the judge. So they went through a second round, and the judge just in the last day came out with the second ruling saying, "Nope, you have to let the reporters back into the building." And as of this afternoon, on Monday, the press secretary replied publicly saying they will, reporters will get their badges back to have access to the briefing room and briefings, but they will not be allowed unescorted privileges in the building, which is pretty much the most important thing of all. And it's kind of a time-honored tradition and that we all had for decades.
Is it paranoia, or is it more he wants to control the narrative? I mean, which is it? He's worried about leaks? Both.
It's both. Okay. I mean, yeah, Hegseth. Look, Hegseth is not a, he's not a career public official who's in it for the public good. He, we know his history. He was a bombastic talk show host who made his way into this job, and more than at any, we haven't seen this anywhere else. We haven't seen this kind of crackdown at the State Department. We saw it briefly with a couple reporters at the White House who have been who have had run-ups with Trump, but not just institutionally. And frankly, no other place has these kind of extraordinary rules. I mean, if you care about how you get your news out of Washington, there's a Pentagon press corps, there's a State Department press corps, there's a congressional press corps, and a White House press corps. there are justice reporters, but there's not like a Department of Justice like briefing room and place where you sit and work. And all of those have different rules. It's most reporters in Washington, everybody, you can get a congressional press pass. That's kind of your step one. White House hard passes are very hard to get. You have to prove you're a working reporter that needs regular daily access to the White House. Same thing at the Pentagon, the State Department. At the State Department, the rules of law had always been for many years. If I wanted to interview, if I had a State Department badge and I wanted to interview an ambassador or somebody, anybody, State Department, you can't walk around freely in the building. You actually have to. You only have certain areas you can go, and it was like the brief room area, but also the cafeteria. You have to have people meet you in one of those public areas of the State Department, the main Foggy Bottom building down at 23rd Street. The Pentagon. Once you get, as a reporter, when you apply for your badge, you fill out a security form. They run a background check, and then you go pick up your badge, and then you get into the building and you can walk anywhere because the Pentagon is like no other building on planet Earth. It has 30,000 people in it, and you're walking around. It's not just a bunch of highly classified superhero, soldiers. It's like the Taco Bell guys and the shoe shine guys and the people that work at the CVS. And all the workers who work at the cafeterias, the many, many cafeterias. And so it's just a gigantic office building. Inside that building, there are plenty of locked doors and locked corridors where you can't get into, where you have to have special privileges to get into. And I can't walk into those. But you can walk around and go into the open offices, especially of the public affairs offices of the Secretary of Defense, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all the Joint Chiefs from all the service branches. And their main offices. So when I was a Stars and Stripes reporter, I worked the early shift because we had, you have to get your stories at an earlier deadline to make it for the Japan edition,
Right. I used to read it. Yeah.
Right. I used to say Stars and Stripes. It was yesterday's news tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm writing about that yesterday, and you're reading it tomorrow in Japan. So all that to say, one of the kind of daily things you could do is just you make the rounds, which was you would go to the Army Public Affairs office, you walk right in, there's cubicles everywhere, public affairs officers, and go, hey, what's going on today? Or what, you got anything coming? Any news? Or hey, this thing happened overnight, especially during the war years. Anyway, there was a lot more open exchange of information, and never has there been any kind of national security incident caused by a reporter at the Pentagon. Quite the opposite. Every other defense secretary, well, maybe a couple on late Trump last time around, but almost every other defense secretary I covered 8 or 9 of them, would leave office praising the press, specifically the press corps, for our professionalism, for how we handle serious stories, how we traveled around the world with them, and would make statements really as signals to the force, to the leaders underneath them, all the way down to the the starter guys, the privates and specialists, to signal the importance of the free press, the trust that they had in the free press, and vice versa. Especially the Pentagon reporters. I'll say it. There's a difference between a Pentagon reporter and any other kind. We're not covering sports. We're not covering fashion. We're not covering, everybody takes their job seriously, but we cover war, and we cover combat, and we cover intelligence, and we cover briefings and international policies. And there's a reason why there's a pretty low turnover in the Pentagon press corps. It's a smaller press corps than any other. And there's a reason for that. When I went there, I had an older reporter say to me, it takes a good 5 years to get sourced up on this beat, because you'll meet someone when they're a lieutenant colonel, and you'll know them as they become a colonel and as a general and on their way up.
Exactly.
I'll end this. I have a buddy. He likes to tell people, I knew Lieutenant Colonel Petraeus.
Right.
Before he was general.
Right. Right.
So all that to say, things are different.
So. And this is the thing, it seems like he's afraid, he talks about leaks and this, that, and the other, and Trump is paranoid. Your sources don't just go and meet you in the Pentagon. This is what's kind of crazy to me, is they're trying to control the narrative information. And I get that. And hell, we have whole departments of the Department of Defense that are dedicated to it. I guess my thing is, right now, when there's so many questions, and Hegseth gets up there in his little morning briefing and tries to be very definitive. It's not the press corps that has the messaging issue. All y'all are doing is relaying. Here's my thing. You have dealt with the Department of Defense. You understand how important messaging is domestically. What do our international partners, our allies historically, what do they think from what they're seeing? Because they're hearing what Hegseth says and Trump says, but they're seeing what's actually happening. What are your thoughts on how we are being portrayed on the global stage, both messaging and in reality?
Oh, well, I mean, there's plenty of reporting and polling to show it. America's, standing has really sunk in the last year. And I recently was at an international conference. I was in India at the Raisina Dialogue, and I was a long time goer of these conferences, like the Munich Security Conferences, and when you go abroad, you'll hear they'll tell you what they think of the United States, and they'll ask you about what's going on back in Washington. And this was, a real different vibe. And it was the week after the war started. So it was just another layer of, oh my gosh, what is going on? But it's a mix of, I can't believe what Donald Trump is doing in that world of professional national security, practitioners, combined with, but we know it's not you guys. We see the protesters in Minneapolis. We see the No Kings movement. We see those they know they have that too. There are right-wing political parties with power who have had significant amount, up 20% of parliamentary seats in some cases for a long time. Europeans are used to having a right wing have power and be in control. Maybe not be as at Donald Trump's level,
right.
So they can understand that too. And I go to what you were saying earlier about signaling the message versus the reality. I'll often say the intelligence and defense community is huge and it's global. And there are like any other people that have been working in it for decades and have relationships that they've built with each other internationally for decades. And now they all work, these leaders, for politicians, and they know the game and they know the reality of this profession. And so I tell a story often where I was in the beginning when the first Trump administration, when he was surprising everybody by tweeting out orders that the Pentagon didn't know about, like, we're going to pull out of Syria. He would just blurt something out, and the Pentagon would go, whoa, let's wait and see about that. I was on a trip to London where we met senior intelligence and national security officials there, and I asked them, I go, how do you guys react when you see something like that? Like, what alarm bells go off here? And they go, oh yeah, we see a tweet, we pick the phone, we call our counterpart at the NSC or at Langley or DIA or wherever it might be, and almost always the response on the other side of the phone is, yeah, we saw it too. Hey, we'll get back to you. We're looking into it. We don't know. Hang tight. So you have these keepers of the watch who are just, they're not ready to hit the button that the president's noticed. They're waiting to find out what was true or not. That was back then. So yeah, I think that still exists, and you see that now.
When you guys hear the president say something or he truth something or tweet something, is your initial reaction to take it at face value? Do you have to go dig deep before you go and say, okay, let's go with this story, let's run this down? What is the reaction? Because you can't really trust what you get on face value. So how do you guys vet and then figure out how to approach?
Reporters?
Yes.
Reporters well, it depends on your job and what kind of reporter you are and what's the point of it. So the president has a unique position in the eyes of, I think, of journalism, that everything he says must and should be reported, no matter if it's true or not. Yeah. He said it. He's the president. Then you can sort it out. So, we went through this again in the first Trump administration, where you started to see editors grappling with new headlines where you would say, Trump said X in an unproven statement. This happened, right? Those little qualifiers, like that never happened. We never, because we didn't have to. That's not at this level, this frequency. That's a change in journalism that has caught up to this crazy times of this unique president, where you have to fact check in real time, or you have to put qualifiers of what he said. With Truth Social and with social media, I mean, there's no point to not say what he said. It's out. It's public. Everybody can see it. And you're not putting it out to your readers, your audience. You're doing a disservice to them. You're not doing your job. So I think it depends. If you're like a daily publication with a large newsroom, you can put out that breaking news alert. Let's say the president said X, and here's what it refers to. Here's what it means. That's all you got to do is say that. That's what breaking news is for. That's different than the second, the third, the fourth story, and the column, and the analysis, and the podcast, and everything that comes along. That might shape out from that story, right? And that's why you can have
Right.
updated and rolling and breaking scroll. Like the New York Times has completely changed its online format now. When you click a story, it's not a completed article that doesn't change. It's going to be the same thing tomorrow's print edition. We're long past that. It's like a blog. It's like a rolling blog with updated, the president said X, here's what it meant. 20 minutes later, here's the reaction from Capitol here. Now here's the White House getting more meat on the bone. It asks a lot. We know as reporters, we would know that it asks a lot of the audience to stick with us, to know that. But you can't not, the president says we're going to war in a tweet. I'm not going to go find out. Wait, are we going to war? Are we not going to? I'm going to put out, holy shit, the president said this, and then I'm going to go find out, what's going on.
Let me get you out on this. Got a blockade of a blockade that's happening, and I'll talk to the viewers about that in detail later. But how do you see this playing out? 6 months from now, when we look back at this, will we still be dealing with this? Is there going to be a natural breaking point? I mean, just based on your experience, especially covering this individual and Hegseth and everything, how do you see this playing out? Because everybody keeps asking that question. I don't have a definitive answer.
And I don't think anybody should. I think, again, this president is the most unpredictable. And this cabinet, this administration, who knows? If I had to guess, the things I think we can estimate, I think the region and our relationship to the region is forever changed because of this. And probably in a way that's good for the United States and good for democracy loving or open society loving places. You think of the last 20 years, things have really changed in the Gulf. The Gulf states are still, monarchies who control their populations and their governments, but they have gone to great efforts to enter into economic and financial and diplomatic relations and ties with the rest of the world in ways that Iran did not, has not, right? And that matters, whether you agree with the governments in the region or not. It's different, and it's different in a way where we have, I tell people all the time, go to like this Formula One behind me. Go to the Formula One race, and there's Qatar Airways everywhere. There are massive relationships that have been built. And a year ago, if you're an American and knew anything about Qatar, you might have read a headline about they were the bad guys because they gave a plane to the president, right? And it was a bribe to the president. Well, the same countries are now united on the same side of the United States as receiving these counterattacks from Iran in a way that a lot of people didn't think was really going to come. We all expected Iran was going to hit the United States bases in Al Udeid and Dhafra and in those Gulf states, but they're going after the airport. They're going after the Burj. They're going after these towers. They're going after civilian places. So that changes the game, the equation. And I think outside of how Trump relates to the region and Jared Kushner and the rest of them, outside of how the government relates to the region, financial systems, the sports and culture communities, the Olympics, the manufacturing bases and critical minerals. There's so many other sectors that had some ties building with the region that are now going to even get tighter, right? All this goes all the way into India. It goes all the way into Europe as that region has become like the biggest travel hub in the world. So I think that's a big change to come out of this is if in the end, Iran will be weaker. They still have a lot of missiles. And I think that's why I don't think we're done yet. I think, if the goal of the administration is the end of those missiles, I was reading Wall Street Journal today reporting that it's assumed that they still have thousands of ballistic missiles. So they're buried. Who knows where they are? So as long as this goes on, that happens. The other effect of it is I think more and more industries and sectors will creep into the headlines as they get hurt by the blockade or by the lack of traffic and prices and everything else that comes with it. I love my DC press corps friends, but man, we obsessed with that gas prices and not much else. I've heard I think agriculturally fertilizer got mentioned because Chef Jose Andreas is popular on Twitter, and the reporters will see that and they'll parrot that. But again, it's so many critical minerals, so many other materials, so much other shipping, not just the shipping lane, the air traffic and the basic commerce and the basic relationship building and the norm of business. All of that has been frozen. And the more that gets frozen, the more there's economic hardship, the more there's unemployment, the more things are going to change. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm curious to see when those F1 races going to get restarted. When do people start talking about vacationing? In Dubai. And when does it all start back up again? And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, it's crazy. The places that were actually my offices on bases are gone, wiped out, blown up. I mean, Bahrain, Fifth Fleet, UAE, Jebel Ali. I can go down the list.
Yeah.
And the question I'm wondering is, are they even ever going to come back? This is fundamentally, I mean, the bases the Americans have abandoned, will we even be able to go back? It's going to be interesting to see diplomatically what the way forward is when all the kinetics have ended. And how we domestically deal with it in the United States, because there's going to be fallout regardless. Kevin, I've kept you a while because this is fascinating. Thank you for spending time with us and showing us your experience, both watching these things and then reporting on these things, which are two totally different things. I have a whole new respect for what you guys in the Pentagon, especially covering Defense One. I remember getting that newspaper in the boardrooms of our ships and Stars and Stripes and all of that. So I want to thank you personally for informing us who were deployed and then continuing to tell the story of what's happening with America and its military.
Well, you're welcome. I always appreciated a chance to, look under the hood of how journalism works back when I was doing it and try to figure out this crazy world. Because, ooh, Billy.
I appreciate it. And thank you very much. And thank you to the viewers for watching. Very informative. But thanks again, Kevin. Kevin Barron from Elevation Global Strategies and formerly of Defense One, CNN, MSNBC. He's been on everything. So thank you very much. Well, that was a great interview. I'm glad that we got Kevin Barron on to just give you a different perspective, specifically also from what it's like to try to be the press and cover all the different things that we're seeing. But I want to talk a little bit about what's happening real time, or as close to as real time as we can get with these different tactics that the White House is employing. So we'll go ahead and bring our exquisite executive producer, Sam Osterholt, on. How you doing, sir?
Exquisite and executive producer. That's a tongue twister, Bobby. I appreciate you.
No, it's something I want to just touch on this just a little bit, Sam.
Yeah.
When you heard about this blockade that the United States is doing, what did you think?
I was wildly I thought I got to call Bobby is what I thought. But I want to ask you about this because my terms must be mixed up, right? Because Iran was not blockading; they were blocking. What's happening?
So especially in the international community, international law, words matter.
Sure.
People have tried to bring up the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, right? And they're like, "Oh, the United States blockaded." No, we didn't. We had a quarantine. There's a reason they use that word, because those of us who know naval history and Navy regulations understand that a blockade is an act of war. Full stop. This is what I said when I saw this in my little morning briefing. I was like, blockades are act of war. Meaning, a blockade means you were denying access of legal seagoing vessels, especially in the international waterway. So for those who don't understand, international waters end 12 nautical miles from the land of another country, with exceptions in straits like the Strait of Hormuz, the Straits of Malacca and Southeast Asia. There are certain exceptions. The world, not the United States, not Iran, the world agreed on these things, right? And they kept revisiting it. And in the 80s, they really codified this, the rules of the road of driving a ship, period. right? And so when this man said blockade, I was like, okay, well, it's obvious he does not have people who really know what the hell they're talking about around him. He just wants to sound tough, because you're basically saying a blockade, and anybody, and this is a key thing, anybody that tries to run that blockade is now subjecting themselves to acts of war. So here's the hypothetical. China gets what, 40% of their oil from that area of the world or whatever?
Right.
Are you going to sit there and try to hijack and try to board a Chinese vessel?
Right.
Think about that. Or Russia, even though Russia has pipelines, let's say they decide to do it. Or India, or any other nation that has seagoers that go to that region. And then my next question is, if China is so hell-bent to get that oil, and they send the People's Liberation Army Navy, the plan is what it's called for short, to escort their tankers to go get it, and they have nothing to do with this, how does the United States Navy treat them?
Right. So if it's a blockade, that would signify China's entering the war.
Either inadvertently or purposely. Because understand, the last time the United States really did a legally allowed blockade was the Civil War. That even during World War II, we did different actions. We tried to blockade things, especially in the Battle of the Atlantic, but it was hard because of the German U-boats. So you got to understand that these terms matter. Them saying this, it sounds so tough, but once again, it's a lot of tough talk with very little understanding or action. That's number one. Number two, Iran did not just shut off the strait. There were ships that are allowed to go through if they do the things that Iran is saying is required. Now, is that wrong? Sure it is. Sure it is. But it's the same thing as if the United States shut off the Gulf of Mexico. The world may have a problem with it, but what you going to do about it? Seriously, if you were trying to get a ship that's going to go into the Gulf of Mexico and up the Mississippi River, for example, we can sit there and say that's illegal to stop it, but you have weapons, you have leverage. And the one thing that every military planner, when they war gamed this out, was they will try to block the straits. And to show you how desperate we are, right? They sent 2 destroyers this weekend, the Frank Peterson and the Michael Murphy, both destroyers, guided missile destroyers, 2 of our newest ships. We no longer have a native mine hunting capability in that area of the world. We decommissioned those ships and sent them back. However, destroyers have a capability where they can do that, limited, not nearly as well as the minesweepers and the mine hunters we had. Understand something, though. Even as they went and the CENTCOM tried to basically tell us, oh, they went all the way through the straits. That obviously wasn't true, because we saw the video of them turning around. The whole world saw it. But even if that was true and they cleared out a path through all the mines that are supposedly laid there, there is no guarantee that the ships that follow behind it will have the same clear path, because mines can shift. They move on purpose. They can move on accident. And again, some mines wait for a certain number of ships to go by, and then boom. What if you're that 3rd or 4th ship that is counting? There's signature. It's so unpredictable. Unlike dealing with war on land, and I tell my Army buddies this all the time, the environment of the sea is constantly changing, and it gets a vote. And so when you say a blockade, the other piece of this too, Sam, is you have to have enough ships to do it. When we did this quarantine in the 60s and John McCain was sitting on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, do you understand the United States Navy had damn near 600 ships? We have half that today.
Wow.
Half. Okay. And you had the actual manpower and iron ships to go do it. A sustained blockade will do 2 things. It will tire out a crew that's trying to maintain it, because they could be overwhelmed. And this is, of course, if ships are moving. And then the other piece of it too is it increases, and I've been saying this since the start, it increases the amount of miscalculation in a very tight space. Everybody talks about how small the Strait of Hormuz is. Imagine getting more ships in there trying to have this blockade and actual ships moving. Thankfully, and I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, thankfully, none of the ships are moving because they cannot get insurance to go through the strait.
Right.
And finally, the last piece of this is the ships that would be involved in this are going to be so far away from the entrance of the Strait of Hormuz because they got to stay out of the weapons range of the shore batteries that could shoot at them from Iran. No one's talking about that.
Well, that's a thing I was wondering about, because if Iran can blow up ships that go through, they can blow up our ships that go through, even the vessels that are sweeping mines, right? So,
well, yes, technically that's definitely a possibility. We have countermeasures, we have all these things that people are going to talk about, but it just takes one to get through. The thing about naval warfare that I think kind of gets lost in the shuffle, because everybody loves talking about war. You got video games and Call of Duty. Naval warfare is different because anytime a ship gets hit, it's a mass casualty. We're not talking about onesies, twosies. If a ship eats a missile in its starboard side, you're talking about right there, probably 60, 70, 80, 100 people dead, right? And you're still fighting to save the ship so it doesn't sink, so everybody else doesn't die. This is why countries historically, going all the way back to wooden sail days, do not like having their navies engage in conflict. It costs too much to make the ships. And when the ships are attacked, too many lives can be lost like that. And Trump's not thinking like that. No one's thinking like that. They're just trying to, we need to beat them into submission. We need to do this. Okay. The second a U.S. ship gets hit by a mine, by a surface missile, whatever, it becomes front page news, period. It don't have to be the carrier. It can be a destroyer. It can be a freaking, a trash punt. But I'm telling you now, it has certain ramifications. And then the last thing I'll say about this particular piece of this is you are trying to basically wait out Iran. But Iran knows that the president of the United States worships money.
Right.
They know that's his true North Star. And they're like, we don't mind being broke. The question is, do you? And I'm telling you now, that answer is no, which is why he has done everything that they could come up with to try to juice the markets, to keep them afloat. But it's all artificial because there's no permanent solution. The markets know it, insurance companies know it, and the world knows it. The governments know it. So I just think this is just adding another layer of difficulty on something that should not be this difficult.
Right. It's essentially saying like, oh, Iran, you want to block the strait? No, we'll block the strait. But the end result is the same.
I just don't think they have a strategic thought in their minds at all throughout all this. They're just like react. Right. I think, let me put it this way. When President Trump and Secretary of State, and I'll use those terms very, very intentionally, when those two were at UFC this weekend.
Oh my God.
And your vice president and your two hand-selected negotiators, again, zero diplomatic experience, were sent to Islamabad to try to figure this out. And they had to keep calling back to get permission to do something. And you took the time to go to a UFC fight. You sent a message to all those who matter in this process. You're not serious. These talks were a sham from day one. Going back to what I said earlier, the ceasefire, and the reason Iran did not want to give it in the first place was because it is just an opportunity to rearm or try to rearm.
Sure.
And Iran said it initially. I said it. And here Trump goes out and talks about exactly that. We're going to use this time to rearm. They weren't serious about coming with a permanent solution. They weren't.
No, and I think the UFC thing is interesting because so many of us were like, what does that signal to us? But you, of course, were thinking, what does that signal to our adversaries? What does that signal to our enemies? What does that signal to our allies? It signals a total lack of commitment and seriousness, right? And Hillary Clinton came out with a statement, and whatever you think about Hillary Clinton, she was a serious person, right? She was a serious person serious diplomat and a serious negotiator, and she never shied away from hard work. And she said, these guys were there for half a day, for 10, 12 hours. That's not how you do this. It is very hard, and you have to be patient. And so I think they're both lazy, and I think they're unserious.
They're overmatched.
And they're outmatched by 1,000 miles.
How do I put it this way? If you took away the might, the strength, and the prestige of the United States away from Donald Trump, and we put him in a situation that had the same amount of stakes, he would crumble.
Yeah.
If you did that with Hegseth, they would crumble. They act this way because they have all of that. But what they don't realize is they're pissing it away very quickly. If we call the UK, or we call Australia, or we call Canada, and I pick those three in particular because they're basically our mothers from another brother or whatever.
Yeah.
They would be slow to pick up the phone. I would also say the only ones that would pick the phone up quickly would be Israel at this moment, at today, in mid-April of 2026, because they all know that Trump would call wanting something from them, not trying to come up with a solution, not asking for their opinions. It would be a request. And so as you see, our NATO allies deny us use of their airspace. That's significant. When you see our NATO allies not allowing their bases in their countries to be used as staging, that's significant. And then when all of this is going on, you see Iran saying, hey, we don't have to negotiate. Do what you will. We will do what we must. That is a difference of mindset that you need, like Hillary said, you need to have professionals, career-long subject matter experts in the room. And this is the problem. They're not in the room. They're not even on the trip.
They're not in the administration, right?
Exactly. So we literally have people who have no experience, don't want to learn, and don't want to think. They want to react, trying to build the plane as we fly. And they think they're soaring when we are quickly cratering to the bottom of a cliff. This is a problem. And now the United States Navy, and this is why I take this so personally, the United States Navy's first and primary job is to keep the world, to be honest, to keep sea lanes open for commerce, trade, and freedom of navigation. Right now, the Navy looks like it's failing in its job, not because of anything the Navy did, but because of what the commander-in-chief has made the Navy go do.
Sure, and because that
eats at me. As someone who's gone through those straits so many times, it eats at me.
So, look, it sounds like in some ways Trump is trying to, he's insisting that we've already won and all of this kind of thing, but maybe he's praying for just a stalemate. But the Iranians know there's no stalemate right now. The Iranians can and will continue to fight and probably have the upper hand in negotiations and in geography and strategy and in all of those things. I think everyone in the audience is probably wondering, project this out 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. What are we looking at?
Well, if we look at it from the 1 month perspective, if there is no sit down negotiations here in the next couple of weeks, in the next month, I think things are going to get really bad. Why do I say that? Because now we're entering the window where we'll see the real oil shock and the lack of oil being in places, and you will see the costs go up. The markets are already reacting to what happened in Islamabad. It's going to get worse if there's no sit-down talks. If there are sit-down talks, and I mean serious, like you said, days, being patient, cracking open something, that's the only way you're going to stage it. But let's play this out and say that doesn't happen, because I don't think the United States right now wants to do that. And when I say that, I mean Trump. He's going to become more desperate. The longer this goes on without a significant sit-down, true diplomatic discussion where they treat each other as peers and not one being better than the other, The longer that does not happen, the more likely we will see drastic military action, i.e. trying to get through the straits, trying to open it up, and possibly trying to put boots on ground. That's what scares me. So that's after a month. If that happens, right, we have now committed to a full-on boots on the ground, try to do regime change, try to go find the nuclear material buried. It's going to be a total commitment. A total commitment. I think it's vital that they are able to sit down and talk, because if they don't, Trump is going to see no choice, because if you're paying $6 and maybe $7 for gas per gallon, and as this timeline is going, there's something working in parallel too, and that's the march to the midterms. All that's happening at the same time. This summer, it's going to be huge. You may see Republicans, this is the other piece of this, I think you'll see Republicans break away from Trump if that happens, because of political survival, number one. And here's the other piece. If boots do go on the ground, the casualties will happen. I do think it'll be people who significantly did not want this. The Marjorie Taylor Greene types that generally did not want this. And I know people are going to be like, oh, no. There are people in the MAGA side that really believe that they weren't going to go to war if Trump was in office. It's what they banked it on, actually.
I wonder where do they get that? Oh, Trump told them.
Yes.
Trump ran on it. Yeah.
Yes. It was the base. It was his foreign policy bedrock foundational trait that, hey, I'm not dumb enough to get into wars like this. You know, who you haven't seen that much publicly? Bibi Netanyahu. The last 2-3 weeks, have you seen him often?
No, and there's indications that he didn't even know that this thing was going to happen. That, I mean, not the war. He knew the war was going to happen, but that Trump was going to call a ceasefire, and Bibi was like, I didn't agree to the Lebanon ceasefire, all of this.
So here's the other piece that complicates that, right? Israel and Lebanon. So Israel and Lebanon are supposedly having separate talks now, or going to have separate talks. Okay. How is this supposed to work? You have Israel that is hitting Iran. You have Israel that's hitting Lebanon. You have the United States that's hitting Iran at the same time. None of them are in the same room negotiating. That was another reason why I knew this was not serious.
Yep.
You had Iran speaking for Lebanon. You had the United States not even caring what Israel is saying, just doing what they do. So here's the thing. You got 4 major bodies now operating. That's not even counting the Gulf states, but the ones that are kinetic against each other proactively, and they're not in the same room. This is what Hillary meant when she talks about professionals.
You're right.
How do you sit there and negotiate something on Lebanon's behalf? They're not in the room, but you're having to listen to what Iran says. J.D. Vance should have ran it. Lebanon needs to be here. Israel needs to be here. And Iran needs to be here. No one called for that. So this is why we're dealing with what we're dealing with. The chaos and the confusion of unprofessional people who are not serious is showing its ugly head.
So I want to just draw this out just a minute. And then, I mean, I'll let you go soon. I promise. But let's look. Iran has a slate of demands that are a starting point, but they are all, for the most part, a list of demands that are each unpalatable to the Americans, to us, in their own special way. What do you think makes Iran agree to like a permanent ceasefire? What are the actual terms, not the ones that they're starting?
To me, I think a couple of things are going to have to happen. One, they will let me back up. First, they will say we want complete and utter reparations for what has happened here. Because from their standpoint, they were negotiating twice in good faith and got bombed both times. Okay. Secondly, the only major capitulation that I see them making is possibly giving up nukes as long as A, the West then provides nuclear power, and then B, not just the guarantees, but everything in writing backed by like NATO saying the United States will never do this crap again. It has to be something that's outside of Trump's administration to guarantee that, right? Yeah. Which Trump will never go for, but whatever. And here's number 3. I think they will keep control of the straits. They will say, look, we'll let you pass through, but understand we reserve the right to shoot whatever the hell we want moving forward. Now, granted, the world will sit there and say that's unattainable. Iran's going to be like, what you going to do about it? What you going to do about it? Because, again, they never played that card before. They only played it when you bombed them during negotiations twice. So I think they're going to demand restitution. They're going to demand, if we can't have nuclear power, we want security guarantees, because they saw what happened in Ukraine. Ukraine gave up their nukes in 91 when the Soviet Union fell. And what happened? Putin eventually invaded. It's the nuclear weapons are the surest way not to be invaded by any other country. None of them have ever had it happen, right? Which is why North Korea keeps theirs. That being said, if you want them to give it up, that's what's going to happen. They got to have some real assurances that I don't know if the Trump administration can handle. And then finally, right, I think they want the United States to show some sort of contrition, like politically, face saving for this new regime. And that is where I think it's just going to be too much for Trump to handle. Trump has never said he's sorry about anything ever. And this is the type of regime that will want some type of statement that they can hang their hat on, as well as everything else. The strait itself, could they open it? Yeah, but it's going to take a lot for the United States to do something to make that happen.
I mean, it feels like it's turning into the next sort of DMZ, the sort of flashpoint, like bottleneck where tensions will spark.
Right, but the difference is
everyone's aimed at each other.
This DMZ has the most precious resource in the world in abundance. And this is why that's why we care. That's why anybody cares. The question that you need to ask yourself, Sam, is what is the United States willing to give up to get out of this? That's the more complex question.
It's and this is what, why my question about what Iran will actually accept, I think is a big piece of that, because I don't see the United States doing any of it. At least Trump in particular. I think that the next administration is going to have to eat a lot of shit on behalf of Trump.
Well, it's funny you say that, because here's the scenario that I'm seriously contemplating, and I think it's actually possibly serious. So they're now saying they're sending 15 warships. Those warships are not coming from the United States. They're already on deployment, which means they're not patrolling other areas of the world. That keeps things stable. Just keep that in mind. But here's my thing. If the United States is serious about reestablishing stability, they're going to have to give up something in that area of the world. The bases that are bombed out, we may never go back there. That may be the price. That may be the guarantee to Iran saying, okay, you know what? We won't have bases in the Middle East, or the ones that we've abandoned, we will leave abandoned. Something like that. Wow. But it's going to have to be, and that's a huge face. But here's the thing, Trump could probably sell it as, hey, we were going to, Middle East has been nothing but hellacious for us anyway. We don't need to be there, blah, 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 whatever he wants to say. But understand, it's going to take something dramatic like that. The United States will never be viewed the way it has been again in that area of the world. And at the end of the day, it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the foot.
I think foot is being generous.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to keep this at a certain level, but you cannot tell me that this is not a strategic loss for the United States.
I mean, this makes step in it like crazy.
This makes Vietnam look like a cakewalk from a strategic standpoint, because even when we lost Vietnam, the entire world's economy was not tied to that country.
Right.
The entire world's economy is tied to this fiasco.
Right.
Period. Full stop. And because of that, there's only one person to blame for this, and it's Donald John Trump. Netanyahu's going to try to rescind it in the background. Hegseth and company going to act like, hey, I was doing what the president told me to do. And it's not a coincidence that J.D. Vance keeps trying to hide. They keep forcing him into the limelight. He keeps trying to hide because he understands what's happening too.
Yep. I mean, he understands what's happening and he feels powerless, and he is powerless.
Right. He's
For sure.
done. He's done.
Yeah.
I
So,
think because of this, I think this move cost JD Vance a legitimate shot at running for president of the United States.
yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more.
So it is what it is, man.
Well, I'm curious. Just one more question, if you're cool hanging out for a sec. This time next week, what are we talking about?
I think this time next week, we're talking about the Strait still being locked down. I think this time next week, we may have U.S. warships trying to board vessels that are in the vicinity. But I also think people are going to try to hold their water, because understand, next week will be right at the end of the 2-week ceasefire.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be that uneasy silence initially. I think going into the next week, we may see the restarting of real kinetic shots, because the economy will be going to absolute crap at that point.
Gotcha.
I think next week we'll start to really feel the effects of the economy and the oil shock. And I think the next week is going to be bad. And I think that's when things will start flying again, because Trump will want some type of relief economically. There's no way. The markets know it. They've been talking about it all day today.
Yeah. Look, I think it's also worth noting that, Trump could end the war right now, but those taps aren't coming on right tomorrow. Maybe markets, stock markets and exchanges are going to smooth out. But that oil is not, it's gone from.
And that's just it too. If they knew, for example, like you said, if the war stopped, the oil flow started today, right? Would there be an initial hit? Yes, but I think the markets, from what I've heard and everybody I've talked to, would kind of flatten out, because they know the worst is over. Because the markets want predictability. It is the greatest form of stability. And when you're dealing with a natural resource, the accessibility matters. If they know the access is coming because everybody is calmed the hell down, that's fine. But the reason that the market is acting the way it is, even during a quote ceasefire, is because every other second someone is saying something that's escalatory.
Yes.
Or and stupid. The markets react. Yes.
Or both.
Yes. And that's both sides. But only one side doesn't care and one side does. Iran does not care about the global marketplace right now. They just don't.
No,
they don't. This is a religious war to them, because it has been treated as such by the United States, and they have picked up on it.
That's right.
Ramifications of actions. So we are going to pay the price for it. I saw this report on freaking utility bills in West Virginia. Those poor people. I saw a dude that is dirt poor, had a $1,700 electric bill.
Oh my God.
Right? That's part of the domestic issues that's happening. Now you compound that foreign issue with it, and the money and the economy. It's all interconnected. You're going to see AI go to shit here possibly if this keeps up, because AI is bankrolled by Middle Eastern oil. All of that money, those billions that you keep hearing about, is coming from those wealth funds in the Middle East, and no one's talking about it. But that's what's propping up the entire economy, is AI right now.
I think it's also worth mentioning that, global politics and international relations rank pretty low on the list of voters' priorities. However, he's managed a way to tie his shit global policy to domestic policy. Right? And all of it comes down like a house of cards.
Yep. And it's always been a delicate house of cards based on the policies that they have pushed. When you sit there and say, we're going to undercut the middle and lower class, and then double down on the billionaire class, and then you go and start an international incident that affects all of their money. I don't understand what 6D chess this is, but it makes no logical sense from a mathematics standpoint. You cannot gut the base of your people economically and then tie their fate to things internationally, because you went and courted all these billions of dollars you bragged about, and then start a war internationally and expect that the people who are originally undercut are not going to feel it. It just doesn't make any sense.
You know what? Maybe George Soros really is pulling the strings, and because he's about to get every Democrat on earth elected in the midterms.
I mean, it has to be. And let me say this last part. Trump talks about their Navy is obliterated, their Air Force is obliterated.
Right.
The Iranian Navy, whether you're talking about the IRGCN, the Revolutionary Corps, or their conventional, never had really that many big ships of the line like a destroyer. They have these things called FAC and FIACs, which are fast attack crafts or fast inshore attack crafts. They're basically glorified speedboats. So when you hear these numbers, hundreds and this, that, and the other, yeah, that's great. That's compelling. They never relied on that strategically to be the thing to defend the country. They relied on all these missiles that you didn't keep up with. They relied on these drones that you thought were toys until they've been turned on you. They relied on the topography and the geography of their country, which is built in. It took millions of years to create. They're banking on things that are cheap, replicable, and most importantly, mobile. They have changed modern warfare in the last 6 weeks more than we have seen since the Falkland War in the 1980s. I'm telling y'all this from a strategic standpoint. The mobility, the reason that we keep trying to bomb everything, because these launchers keep moving and we're not getting all of them. We're not even getting close to all of them. When the intelligence community tells you have thousands of missiles left and you have hit 13,000 targets, let the United States military tell you, and there's still thousands of left, how do you think that is? Maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe they were the ones looking at Ukraine and Russia and like, there's something to this drone thing. Right. And your archaic way of looking at big, huge ships and big, huge aircraft carriers, and now you want to have a Trump-class battleship. You're fighting the war of 50, 60, 70 years ago. And they're looking at modern asymmetric warfare, and they are single-handedly bringing the entire world economy to its knees.
You carry a long gun, and you decide you're going to destroy a wasp nest with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you spend your time shooting at those wasps, and they just get you.
Yep, they keep getting you. And so when you think you've hit the nest, right, the wasp attack more furiously. They're not worried about the nest. They're worried about stinging you.
Yeah, right.
And that's what's happening. And a lot of people are getting stung, and a lot of fancy long guns are being shot, and a lot of damage is being done to those shooting those long guns. Mm-hmm. It's the best way to put it. That's a very good analogy, Sam.
I've learned from the best, Bobby.
No, it's our, I've been saying it, and I'll leave it at this. Our intellectual and strategic arrogance is getting our asses kicked long term. You can sit there and talk about all the tactical victories you want. War is not won just by tactics. It's won by having strategic objectives, goals, and a plan at that level to win. And it is obvious, and you've seen Pentagon sources say it, there is no strategic objectives. There is no strategic plan. They're just trying whatever they can and seeing if something works. That is not how you conduct warfare. Hell, that's not how you run a 7-Eleven. And here we are. Here we are.
They also need logistics, right, Bobby?
Yes. See? Still trying to see how that's going to work long term.
I've been listening.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's all. And that's why Iran took out the bases they took out. It wasn't because it was just, no, because they knew that they were logistical hubs and nodes for the United States military apparatus in the Middle East. And they took them out.
Unbelievable. So. Well, Bobby, thank you, man.
Oh, man. I appreciate y'all having me on, man.
It's your show. Yeah, of course. We couldn't do this without you. And everyone out there, you got to subscribe to Bobby's Substack, Navshad. If you're not a subscriber to Lincoln Square, why not? It's free. You can do it. You got it. You got this in you. I believe in you. Yeah. We're reading your chat and reading comments as we go. Appreciate y'all. And Bobby, I appreciate you.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you guys and appreciate you. And thanks for listening.